Hello and welcome to our Empowering Law Firm Leaders series, where we'll be talking to experts across the legal sector to discover the mindsets, behaviours, skills and digital tools that are needed to run a successful modern law firm. I'm Amy Bruce, host and head of marketing at Osprey Approach, and today I'm joined by the 2020's Practice Manager of the Year winner, former operations manager, current ILFM trainer and writer, and now founder and director of Aries Legal Practice Management, Kirsty Pappin. Welcome, Kirsty. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. Lovely to be here. It's the second one of today, so I'm feeling super energetic, loads to chat about. So you might have to just shush me up a bit.
Pleasure. So yeah, today we'll be discussing what it takes to run a successful modern law firm. We'll cover what effective practice management looks like, including the behaviours and habits of the leadership team, how to navigate change management, the importance of continuous improvement, and how to mitigate risk. But first, tell me a little bit more about yourself, Kirsty, and how your experience has led you to where you are today.
So yeah, sure. Thanks, Amy. I've been working in the legal profession for about 20 years this year. Started way back when I was at university doing work experience placements and working with local firms in Portsmouth, sort of ad hoc work and working with the Systems Advice Bureau, speeding up to today. So I've worked in large UK and US firms as well now, both as a paralegal junior sort of level fee earner with partners in sort of Washington and within litigation arbitration. So I've got all that sort of fee earning experience, been right in there with it. And with that, actually I've worked within the business administration and operation aspects of both UK, US law firms and lots of SME firms as well. So piling that all together, I've got quite this sort of unique hybrid experience in both that's been really useful, sort of finding innovative and creative ways to work with law firms. And then sort of it came to a point where I was like, actually I want to work for lots of SME law firms as best possible and help them grow, come into the now, innovate for the future, and fill a gap where's needed, and then founded Aries Legal Practice Management start of last year. We've just gone past first anniversary, and there's lots of exciting stuff going on, but it's been a journey, but now it's a really exciting one going forward.
Yeah, congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah, it came around really quickly. It was sort of just here. I was like, oh crikey, hello. So it's just like,
I know you've got so many plans and things that you want to do within the business that we've discussed previously, but obviously today we're going to pick your brains as to some of the sort of experience and knowledge on how to run a successful modern law firm. So I really hope people can stick around to the end, because we're going to get really great knowledge and tips from here. But if they only had 5 minutes, what are your top 3 things that you believe are crucial to running a successful modern law firm?
Planning, definitely plan. And this links to both the individual and the business, but the business itself being prepared to be prepared. So planning, be prepared to be innovative and creative with solutions and your planning as well. And with that, having really good conversations, communication with that, and sort of change management and how that all links together. I have a thing which I'm calling the 3 C's, which is communication, change management and courage. Put that in as sort of the third sort of aspect, but I think that's all those things together are going to be, really crucial for law firms to be successful going forward. There's so much coming. So yeah, that's my quick summary on what I think is needed.
Yeah, I love that word courage. I feel like that's not normally lumped in and amongst all this. Obviously strategy and planning is key, obviously people management and empowering your people is key, but I love that courage element of it.
Yeah, it came about actually when I was running sort of my presentation for the ILFM's November conference, and we were just looking at crisis management and risk assessments, and there's always this big talk about communicating within any business, specifically law firms for us. There's massive talk about change management and how that looks, and the processes involved. But with all of this, you've got to have courage. You've got to have courage to communicate effectively and say what's on your mind. You've got to have courage to hear the things you don't want to hear. You've got, got to be open to receive the communication, and generally just courage in your convictions, especially when you're looking at sort of crisis management. I appreciate that's not quite our topic today, but you've got to make a decision. You've got to run with it, and you've just got to have the courage to go. You don't sometimes have time to pause, and you just, that, and that's part of, I think, of any decision you make, sort of growing a law firm, and getting ready for sort of the successful firms of the future. Is you just got to have courage in your decisions, and run and go, and just be prepared to make mistakes, and be cool with that.
Yeah, I think the courage for failure is probably a key part of that, isn't it? Because with any innovation or with any change comes experimentation, which then comes a bit of failure. So you've got to have a bit of courage to deal with that, I suppose.
Exactly, and because it fit in with the 3 C's concept I was going with, so it worked. I felt like it worked very well. And then, with that is just, as you mentioned, with innovation, there's always a calculated risk in what you're doing, and so with that, whether when you do your sort of your pre-mortems or your risk assessment and assessing, where you're going, or in products you have R&D, right? So there's a lot of failure there, but to fail means that you've tried something as well. So it's definitely something I think more practice managers, if they embrace that, and conversations that I have with practice managers, they found that concept really helpful for their decision making and what they're trying to do with their SLT within a law firm.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to be fair, that innovation forms part of our 4 fundamental habits, which goes under continuous improvement. And our Build Better Habits series, which is our sort of series alongside this one, I was inspired to create that series based on reading the book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. That book sort of highlighted me the importance of our daily habits and how they create and impact our reputation, and how we're seen. It's those repeated sort of behaviours and habits that of teams and employees that build a firm's brand that could either positively or negatively affect them. And I guess I wanted to ask you, what do you believe are the habits and behaviours that make a good practice manager?
I think the habits and behaviours, I had a bit of a think about this, and I think firstly being open-minded. I mentioned that earlier on, but as an individual, as a practice manager, being open-minded to receiving new information. So and for me, I work very closely with SME law firms, and so they're in this, some are really, really geared up to come into the now and prep for the future, and others are still quite stuck, and not I'm not trying to make this, it's not a negative thing, but it's just how it has been for various reasons, whether it be financial or partnerships, sort of stuck in how they work and in a rut. But they're in this position where, and the practice manager's not been allowed to evolve. So I think going forward, being very open-minded to receive the information you may have not already had, that's, I think, is a really, really really important attribute to have. I think regards to behaviours, it can be quite an isolated role. So a practice manager is that linchpin in any SME law firm. They cover many business areas, whether it be the finance, compliance, HR, people, office management, facilities, and everything in between. And I think they need to be able to communicate really well with the highest level partnership and that personality, and also be able to come down to a more junior level and understand those that are very green, that are coming into a law firm and don't have experience. You need to adapt your communication skills. So that in itself is a really good non-technical skill to have, is again going back to the communication part. But in here it's more the psychological communication with individuals and how you can get the best out of them, and I think that's going to be really, really important, and just becoming that really good bridge between the fee earners and the admin team as a go-to, as a problem solver, You're never going to, as a practice manager, you wouldn't go up to your managing partner and say, oh, we've got this problem, and expect them to solve it. You would go, this is my problem, these are the solutions that I've seen, this is what I reckon the cost will be if there's some sort of cost assessment needs to be done, or tendering. I've got contracts in, I've read them, whatever it may be. You have to be able to really bridge that gap between the two, problem solve and so forth. And again, I think practice managers are very much gatekeepers for SME law firms, and I think that's something that needs to be sort of promoted more. I think it is such an important role, and I mentioned this on a LinkedIn Live with Rob Hanna, and again mentioned it this morning on a recording I did, is that practice managers, they're superheroes. Wear that cape and own it, because those sort of things are necessary to keep the firms moving and sort of business processing.
Yeah, they've got to be at the centre of the operation and almost have their fingers in all the pies, and then be able to know what's the priority for the people, what's the priority commercially, what's the priority for the partners. So they're constantly filtering against everyone's needs, against the priorities they've been set.
Oh, absolutely. So I have I spoke to one of my clients today, and the priorities that we set out together back in sort of December have evolved completely. They are not what they once were, because things come in, the business changes, and there's some few crises that we're dealing with. So you have to be, I hadn't mentioned it before, but you have to be adaptable. You have to be ready to change on a pinpoint, and switch gear from, at one moment I could be, we had this plan to look at branding, the marketing strategy, go out to tender, bring it all in, and I would be project managing while an external resource was dealing with that. And it completely turned around, and actually what we're looking at is the people side of the business, and bringing on more people and how agreements look and so forth. So that part then moved. So you have to be ready to navigate these changes and be absolutely fine with it, and go where the business needs.
Yeah, you've got to be a bit of a chameleon, I suppose.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Oh my gosh, so much so.
And that probably would lead into my next question, is having your experience and having worked with all these law firms, what do you believe are the behaviours and potentially values that separate the really successful ones, or the ones that are leading the way? What are those differentiators?
So first, I'm going to differentiate between the size of law firm. I think, because I've worked in large UK, large US and SME firms within the UK, and quite a few SME firms now, they're very different beasts. US and UK large firms are not comparable, I don't think. I think they're very different, the way they work, and their dynamic. They may disagree, but from someone who's been inside, I see it very differently. And then regional firms are different once again. But for SME firms, which is, where your market is and where mine is that actually those firms that are being successful, and I have one particular client that is absolutely nailing this, and this is before I came on board, but the managing partner, she is just unbelievable. It's culture, and it's not just that culture that that's been dictated. I went to a team meeting, and I was doing they had a big day firm-wide team meeting, and I came in to do a presentation. I was invited in, and you could just feel it in the room. People wanted to be there. People were involved in the growth strategy of the firm. People were throwing ideas, including me, but throwing ideas as to what could be part of the business plan going forward for the business for the next year, 3 years, 5 years. But everybody was involved. It wasn't just partners, it was everyone. And I felt like those are the firms that are going to really drive, because those people want to be there, because they don't have those huge salaries to throw out there. So they offer something more, and I think that sort of growth culture mindset is going to really differentiate the firms that succeed. Those that shut their eyes to these things, I think in the next 5-10 years, we, you know, when people don't have great succession plans in place, you're gonna, and you know, and this is not my market, M&A is, you know, that's other people's market, but I think you're going to see more firms actually closing doors or being bought out, trying to merge, because they don't have the people coming up through the ranks that want to take on the business. Whereas those firms that have set their culture and their growth already from the grassroots, you know, those green people, they're gonna come through. And I think that's super important. And being open to legal technology, experimentation again, and hitting the 3 C's, you know, blasting that in again. But, you know, having communication, allowing for good change management, allowing courage, allowing your staff to come up with ideas, and that being okay. So yeah, I think that is going to definitely set, I think, firms forward. And if they want to be part of that successful, you know, journey, that's the boat they need to jump onto.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that energy that you feel is infectious, and
it was,
that's why.
It really was.
Yeah.
Seriously, I came into the room and I was gobsmacked. I didn't expect it. I'm coming in as a project consultant, so I'm not with these people day to day. I've met with the managing partner a few times. I met with the ops manager, and that's pretty much it. It's not been much more than that. So when I came in and I met everybody, and everybody was smiling and joking and happy, I've not seen that. I've not seen that much energy in a room in a law firm before. I think I made a joke that she needs to get it, bottle it, and sell it, and that's her millions, because there's this special recipe going on here.
Yeah, and I guess a part of building that, because I mean, it's easy to build if you're a startup perhaps and you're starting this journey, it's easy to build that culture and set it from the start. But if you're somebody who has been in business for many years, or perhaps you've taken over, or perhaps this is sort of your main priority to change your culture, I guess the thing that really stuck out to me there that could be helpful in helping to build that is transparency. So being open about what your mission is, what your goals are, what you're good at, what you're not good at. I feel like that's might have sat at the heart of that.
Absolutely. I think there was definitely a lot of transparency in the room. You know, and I've seen this with other firms that are trying to move into that direction, is that they don't go and have partner retreats. So partner retreats don't exist, because it then sets this hierarchy. So it's team building exercises, and what I've always recommended and what I have seen happen is when they go in, they say, well, this is how we did in these years, this is how our growth has been, this is how our reviews have been, this is what we're hearing from clients, this is what we're hearing from staff, and they're starting the day and the journey with information. This is how profitable our business has been, you know, and this is what we're looking to do, and we want, where we, you know, not necessarily getting down to nitty gritties of the numbers, but this is where we want to invest for the business going forward. You know, whether it is a new practice area, wherever we're looking to recruit, you know, allowing that there are opportunities for everybody in the business. I think that is that magic. That will set it apart.
Yeah, and that's what empowers employees. Again, that's our 4th habit of the Build Better Habits. That's what makes people get out of bed in the morning, if they know how they're contributing and how they can assist in that journey and be a part of it.
Oh, completely. I think, and again, I appreciate that. I refer to clients, but I have another client that I've recently started working with. Very, very different dynamic again, but there was just something special in what they want to do with the business, and I felt really excited to have been invited onto this journey, from an operationals perspective and projects to help them sort of see that through. And it's infectious, because you want to be part of that journey, and you want to contribute what you have, your insight, your information, knowledge, into the business to help them hit their goals, their purpose, wherever they want to see. And I think if you can give that to your employees or your consultants or whomever it is that's in your business, in your law firm, you'll see great things. But if people get up and they have those Sunday afternoon blues, oh, I've got to go to work tomorrow, it's not so much fun. And I think for taking it back to sort of practice managers, they can absolutely be part of that sort of journey, because they can see from both sides. If they see that something's not quite working or gelling, or they see people unhappy in certain departments, they can feed that through. And then those, back to open-mindedness, those managing partners, those senior leaders, and that are open to receiving that information, and, you know, having the courage to receive it and not being afraid. They're like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to hear that. That's not good for my business. Sort of like, oh, they just need to, you know, I used to hear years ago, oh, that's just how it is. They just need to suck it up. No, they don't need to suck it up, because there's another law firm down the road that's looking to be better, and they will just go there. You want low attrition rates. You want to keep those staff that you've trained and invested in. So yeah, so there's lots there. Sorry, you're gonna have to pause me. I'm terrible. I could just talk. So just cut me off, Amy.
No, it's great. And I mean, all those points lead into my next question, actually, because I'm intrigued, obviously, with your background as well. What's your thoughts on the impact of non-lawyer leaders? So I read an article on LPM from the COO of Thompson, Smith and Puxton. I thought that was a great article. And obviously, with your background, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, especially in operational roles, what's the impact that non-lawyer leaders can have there in perhaps having that better insight and those eyes and ears to be able to connect those dots to make those improvements?
I don't look, well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a qualified lawyer. I did a law and accounting degree. I did my LPC. I was at Herbert Smith and decided, oh my gosh, no, I do not want to be a trainee. I was absolutely put off by the idea, and I thought, actually, I like the idea of the operations, the business aspects, and literally went down that route, finished my LPC and ran with it. So, but I kept fee earning from as a paralegal, and then when I was at Skadden, I was doing lots of very junior level project management work and working closely with trainees and a 1 to 3 year PQE, and we were all sort of pulled into this dynamic as fee earners. So I kept doing that as well as grabbing the business part, and that's great for me. But I think there are loads of amazing non-lawyer leaders, and I don't think you have to have been a lawyer to be a leader in a law firm. I don't think you have had to have been a lawyer to be a partner in a law firm. I think there are loads of amazing operation, finance, practice, HR directors, managers that have worked in the legal profession for years and been completely embedded, that understand how it works. And I think the legal, for me, I think the legal profession is a beast of its own. It is very different to any other sort of profession I've sort of touched on. And so I think if you want to have sort of diversity within your SRT and your management, having non-lawyers is amazing, because lawyers are trained one way, and they're, you know, if I listen to people I know very closely that are lawyers in my household, shall we say, you know, they're great business people, but they think very differently. Their risk assessments are different. Their and the way they nuance and the detail is different. Whereas non-lawyers see things from sometimes a more pragmatic approach. And I'm not saying that lawyers don't. It depends on the individual personality as well. But I think you've got to mix it up. You've got to think that you can't be a lawyer and have done fee earning and specialised in your practice area, because you're not going to have the involvement in all those business areas, especially if you've never been trained as you've come up the ranks and you've just jumped into the role, which you hear about all the time. Look, you know, people are made partners and yet they've had some management training and looking after staff, and they may be a natural leader, but in actual fact, they're not too sure about marketing, business development, HR people, how the employment process works, how finance goes in, because they're used to just doing what they do. So I think if you bring everybody into the boardroom, you're winning, right? You've got a winning recipe there.
Yeah, I was talking to Sean, who I know you did a webinar with today, Sean Jardine, and he was basically saying, like, lean on experts, like delegate your work. Don't expect people who have, you know, specialised, like you said, in being a lawyer to then get involved in marketing. Hire a marketing expert, get somebody in who can take that load off your plate.
Absolutely. And it's the same for practice managers as well. Practice managers cannot be experts in everything. They can be an expert in one, maybe two, and they can be really well versed in other areas and they have information in others. So I'll use myself as an example. I know quite a lot about finance and how the finance aspects work in a law firm. My preference is management accounts to financial accounts. I will not touch financial accounts with a barge pole. That is not what I enjoy. It's not my bag. The accountant can do that. I don't enjoy cashiering, so I've never really thrown myself into it, but I know lots and lots to understand how that aspect works. But I'll bring in a legal cashier. I don't want to do that day to day. But my expertise lies in operations, in risk management, crisis management, people, the HR, the learning and development, and all that part of the business. And I have really good understanding of branding, marketing, business development, and all that stuff that sits in the middle. And I appreciate that's very sort of defined, and the waters are very muddied within all of that. But for me, what a really good practice manager will do is they know how to facilitate. So for one of my clients, I will go out and we've pulled in a compliance firm, an expert, to deal with all the compliance, because I don't want to draft those policies. Let's get the expert in. I know where my strengths lie. I know where my client's strengths and weaknesses lie. So we've pulled them in and they're doing an amazing job. And so I facilitate that so that the managing partner doesn't have to deal with it. And that's being worked through, and that's amazing. We've pulled in a financial consultant to deal with accounts to get that all streamlined and ready. So I'm facilitating that so I don't have to deal with that day to day. And we've also pulled in, we're tendering for sort of marketing, branding, website. Those things I'm going to facilitate, but I'm dealing with the recruitment piece and the people piece and the day-to-day sort of strategy and how things will grow going forward and where to place the next steps, because I can't do all of that. And I think that's what practice managers need to be able to do. That's what law firm leaders need to be able to do. So as Sean says, lean on the experts and know when you need to delegate, because that's a really good strength to have as an individual. Managing partners and partners that have practice managers know that it's okay to bring in other people for your practice manager to lean on and facilitate, because that can only be good for your firm.
Yeah, 100%. In one of your previous LinkedIn posts, you asked the question about what is your biggest fear, and then you listed some of the key issues that could hit a law firm, like SRA, fines, and unexpected staff changes. And then you highlighted that they all have one thing in common. So I guess I wanted you to explain what that one thing was and why you see it so often and how firms can avoid this pitfall. So just to sort of highlight before I drop you in the deep end, you highlighted that the common thing was nobody made an essential change when it was needed or quick enough. Can you explain a little bit about what you meant on that?
Yeah, so I know what that was. I think that was a Halloween post where there's a picture of me on a laptop going ooh across the screen. What is your biggest fear? Not making change when you should have done, and then wrote about it. Yeah, what made it is I've worked with firms where actually it's been recommended that they make changes to policy, specifically, let's just say AML, and you need to do this, you need to do this, and they don't. And this is not new information for law firms as well. So I'm sitting on the fence a bit about, I don't, very carefully, but I don't have a view really either way. But this is not new information about anti-money laundering. It's been around for a long time. If you're coming into 2024 and you haven't made the changes and the SRA are knocking on your door, you should have made that change. That's the thing. A lot of them are like, why didn't we do that when we should have done it? These are the words I've heard where partners gone, oh my God, we've had a fine come through, we're getting audited, why didn't we put that policy in place, or why didn't we change it when we should have done, because it goes on a back burner. So that happened, and it was, you can empathize with it, but at the same time, this is not new information. It's also not new information that cyber attacks take place. This has been going on for ages. So if you haven't put 2FA or, you know, two-factor or multi-factor authentication in place, if you haven't put in firewalls, if you haven't upgraded your systems, allowed your patching to go through, spoken to your IT experts, which, you know, we haven't deliberately avoided touching on tech too much during our conversation because that's like a whole other rabbit hole. But if you haven't done those things, and normally your practice manager is probably telling you to spend some money and you're like, oh, I don't need to, and you get a cyber attack, you know, you should have made that change. So it was kind of just trying, I personally was just using the Halloween theme. I was all dressed up, had the makeup on. I was like, I really want to put this in a LinkedIn post. How is this going to work? And sort of thinking back examples. But I have had conversation with a managing partner before where they were hemorrhaging money because of an inefficient complete IT infrastructure. I think most people, including admin staff, were losing anywhere between 3.5 to 5 hours a day where things were slow, crashing, not working. And it came about where we'd gone through and we'd looked at the money that was being lost. And it was like, you've got 3 options. You can spend this amount of money and upgrade and everything's going to be fine. You cannot do it. And I'm really sorry, but my time with you ends here because I can't continue working in this environment. Or 3, you don't do it, I leave, and your office burns down because things were smoking, there was lots of paper everywhere, kindling, like that. And there are many law firms that are in this situation, and I feel for them because it's a massive investment if you've not kept up to date with your IT and tech infrastructure. It is expensive. It's a lot of money. I really do understand. So when you're starting to get into a situation where it's really bad and you've put band-aids on everything, you've daisy chained cables together, and you're pushing your complete infrastructure to the limit, then when it goes down,
who's to blame?
Who's to blame? You know, so when you have an opportunity to upgrade and make change and the warning signs are there, like don't bury your head in the sand, don't ignore them. And for practice managers, I get it, I've been there, I am there. I have clients now that I'm like, you need to spend money, and like, can't spend the money yet, we need to strategize this, where can we put what where, and sort of understand the return on investment and look at the consequences and pre-mortems and so forth. But if you want to avoid and not have that fear and not have those problems, I think, you know, listen to your practice managers. They're not saying these things for their own health. They want to help, they want to, and they don't want to deal with the aftermath. Because as someone who's dealt with an IT system that crashed for 48 hours and my WhatsApps did not stop and I don't think I slept, I had a young child, IT systems, Microsoft wasn't helping, the IT were around the clock trying to find a new gateway in to get the information if we lost everything. I worked for a non-law firm where they had a power outage in Zurich where their server was held, fried the entrance into the server. The data was safe, luckily, but to everybody else in the outside world, it looked like this particular business had gone bust and would essentially stolen all the client money. And it's dealing with that. You're dealing with that crisis. If you've not done it, I promise you don't want to do it. So make the change when you need to make the change and don't leave it. That was a really long-winded answer, Amy. No. I'm sorry to everybody out there.
We love it. We love to pick your brains, but I think you're right. And it's not, if you leave those changes to the very last minute, you're making one big massive change or dealing with one big massive problem. Whereas actually, if you deal with those problems as and when they come, and that's across the business, it's whether you need to hire new people because we know retention's really hard, or whether it's that we need to implement a new process because we know the efficiency's bad. If you can spend a small bit of time up front to get that in place, you're helping yourself out in the long run. And the phrase you said, why didn't we do this sooner? We hear this so many times from case management software point of view, when we introduce a new feature and it's revolutionized something. It took 5 minutes to implement it. It was a slight training tweak and it revolutionized their day. And we always hear, why didn't we do this sooner? That's always the phrase we hear.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things I had discussed this morning with Sean and the penguin colony was that when you're looking at making change, you know, why didn't you do it sooner and everything, one of the things we notice, and it happens especially and as firms get bigger, and there was somebody there that was from a bigger firm that was just nodding in agreement throughout the whole piece, was that it's committee meetings for meetings to not actually come out with a decision. And you're like, we've not gone anywhere further, we've just had a discussion about options again, but haven't actually come up with any actionable points or next step or whatever it is. So one of the things I think for practice managers, when you want to make a change, is actually facilitate and just Google it, get some tips off Google, but facilitate the meeting itself, the partner meeting, board meeting, go in with an agenda. And I've been in the room where you've got 9 partners of varying personalities, everyone from lock, stock and 2 smoking barrels to the good lawyer, all in the same room. You don't know which way your head's going, shouting and screaming at each other, and you're like, hang on, let's get back to the agenda. This is what we have to make a decision on this point. It's not go out of the room and think about it. You've had time to think about it. We've given you the information to read up. If you haven't, get with it quickly. We need to move forward because we have to make progress, because this is the consequence if we don't. And I remember doing that with a law firm when I went in, and I was very firm on the agenda. So look, I've gone through the return on investment for you. We've gone through and done a full audit. We've let you know the risks from green, low risk, to like red risk, high priorities. You've got the reports. These have been circulated. We've discussed it 2 or 3 times over. Are we doing this? Yes or no? And we put it to a vote, and it was unanimous, and they all agreed to do it. But they were nitpicking on certain details that were just irrelevant at that point, because they were getting right into the minutiae. The question was, we need to do this. We're doing this, right? We're going to spend the money. Yeah, right. How are we going to get the money? Finance partner, you deal with how that's going to be facilitated, and we'll report back. So I think for practice managers, ops managers, whatever your title it may be, being able to facilitate and move projects forward in that for change is so important.
Underrated skill to be able to truly think about these things and plan what everyone's questions are going to be. So you've got your research together, you've got your answers together, and then to be able to assign responsibility and accountability. I think that facilitation is such an underrated skill in any business really, but especially a law firm.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And again, I feel like I am echoing some of the things I mentioned this morning, but the facilitation of these things is really important. It goes back to those 3 C's: the communication and the psychological sort of understanding of the various personalities in the business and how you're going to approach them, and knowing what their triggers are as well. It's something that takes a long time to get to, and sometimes in actual fact that long time you don't have, because you might not have interactions with these personalities day to day. So you've got to be able to sort of pick up on body language in these meetings quite quickly. So spending time sort of continuously learning for yourself in the background to your day-to-day job, and then, you know, again, being able to stick to agendas to get outcomes finalized and next step actions moving.
Yeah, I think one of the key skills there in able to do that is curiosity. You have to be able to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily of the person you're in the room with, but perhaps questions of the team they've worked with before, so you can get a feeling on what they are. I think being curious is a key part of building that platform.
Yeah, I think you're right. Which is why I love what I do now, and part of the reason why I wanted to found the business that I'm doing and growing, is that I had so much curiosity. I could see how different business areas all interlink, and the idea of being siloed into one is it doesn't always work, I think, for an SME firm. So you got to have someone that can the role of practice manager is evolving. There's a lot of project management there, and there's a lot of facilitation, as you mentioned. It's an underrated skill, and I think it's going to be really important to put all those pieces in if firms want to move to be successful in the future. There's lots of amazing people that can talk about cash flow and profitable business and turnover. And I've had Simon McCrum on here, and he's amazing, and he can go through all of that part with you. Do that bit, but you also need to have this part as well. And if you can do both of those and bring them together, you're laughing, right?
You're winning. Absolutely.
You're winning at being a law firm.
We've talked about continuous improvement, and I know in your sort of work you've talked about a strategic pause and being able to have that time to ask, how can we do things better? How can we innovate? How can we adapt? But what can law firms do to better prepare for the unexpected? So it's not always something that you can prepare for. It's not always something that you've got on your plan. Things may crop up out of the blue. What best practices can they implement to make sure that they're prepared and managing those sort of challenges and risks?
Yeah, I think what is really helpful is continuously auditing, even if they're mini audits, to various departments to see what's there, what's happening. Speak to people, speak to your team to see what could be brewing. Speak to your IT team. Lots of continuous sort of learning for your team, bring them on journeys with you. But I think when you have projects or things you want to do, and I wrote an article on this for I think it's legal Abacus February-March edition with the ILFM, was about pre-mortem, and sort of taking, okay, well, this is the final endpoint that we want to get to. Was everything, and in a summary, was everything that could possibly go wrong, and work out why it would go wrong, and working backwards. So it's essentially a post-mortem with a few less dead bodies is the way I described it, because you're preparing for those. You can only, the best thing you can do is plan and be as prepared as you can. And I think when the S does hit the fan, you need to just breathe and calm, and don't panic, because if you're panicked, the managing partner panics. You need to be very, okay, we've got this. It's how you deal with the crisis management aspect. And I think coming all down to it is the unexpected does happen. I saw a sewage leak I didn't want to see in a law firm. That was unexpected. But myself and the managing partner and the other partner was dealing with it at the time, we were like, can I swear? Shit's happened. Shit's happened. And we met, shit happens. And we made a joke of it. It was a serious thing. It was like, what? There's nothing more you can do. It's happened. How are we going to deal with this? So it's then planning the steps and just being prepared, and then going back originally, as I said at the beginning, the 3 C's: communicate, look at the change management aspects and how you're going to deal with that, and just have courage in the decisions you make. I think if you do those 3 things, you're on a really good road to success.
Yeah, I think that as part of the prepared, I think it's just making sure that you're confident you've done all you can, to have the best people around you, to have the best systems around you, to have the best policies and procedures around you. Because if you're confident and you have those courage and those convictions that you've made, then when that does happen, there'll be a process you can lean on, or a person you can lean on to get you back to where you need to be.
And it's all very well as well, it's great to have the best people, the best policies and procedures, but they always also change. As soon as you think you've got it in place, it's changed again. So just being okay with the fact that it's not always going to be the best, and just knowing how to just keep updating and moving. If you keep moving and being prepared to grow, again, it's really helpful. Just keep aiming for the best as well. If you keep aiming for that 100%, if you keep going for there, you keep working towards it. If you just settle and bury your head, straight away in about 6 months, you're way behind. You've just got to keep on the trajectory forward. And as we mentioned, if you don't know, lean on an expert, get someone in to discuss it with, whether it be a mentor or a consultant or whomever, to say, look, can you help us strategize, or what are your thoughts on this? And don't the managing partner be the person who facilitates the meeting either. You're the worst person to do it. Get someone else in to do it for you. Be part of the meeting instead.
Yeah, that's a great bit of advice, and I think that's the perfect way to end. I think that was a great roundup to make sure that you're constantly moving, constantly striving for action, striving for that perfection, but don't let yourself be limited just because perfection isn't there. Nobody's perfect. We've all got to fail and
we all make mistakes
and
I make them
experiment.
all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just got to keep moving forward. Don't sit down, I think, is the key message as part of all your chat. So thank you so much for joining me, Kirsty. I really appreciate picking your brains and getting your knowledge out there.
I mean, thank you to everyone for listening. Appreciate it.